Hey gang, it's I, DrBossKey, and today I thought I would share with you a recent addition that we've made to the game about creating more conveyance in the UI layer for essentially power-ups and core game mechanics. So from playtesting, what I've been hearing from playtesters is that even after they've gone through the tutorial, they don't necessarily know what these green glowy bits are. They don't know what these power-up icons are for health. And it's a bit of a mystery. And there's a couple other things here. So you can also see the icon in the bottom corner here. This is a monster trophy. And those come up even more rare. So and the monster trophy is a medal. That's the way it's counted. So we started thinking about, well, how could we potentially add more conveyance, especially for things like your health points or your whole points, is what we call it, pardon me. How can we create conveyance between what the power-up icons are and the enumeration. So there's some feedback and suggestions in the community for the Shmup Creator developers to allow us to change out numbers for icons. So it'd be cool to have, like, instead of on the number 1, have 1 health icon and have maybe 5 or 10 or 25, whatever you want to do. But features are expensive and it takes time, and there's a huge backlog. So this is an in-between step where from playtesting, we've decided to roll out this particular feature. And I thought I'd show you how I did that. So a couple things here. So one, let me just, I have basically a temporary setup. All right, cool. So in this temporary setup, I paused it here. So I basically just have when the player goes into this collision volume, that we spawn a monster trophy, we spawn some star bits, soul bits, and then we have the health icons here at the bottom. So here you can see that we added the glowing, we added the glowing bits up here. And so when, hopefully, as the super meter starts to climb, players will start to understand that even if these are going into the ship, that there's, that this is sort of, this little lost soul bits are driving the super meter gauge. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when players pick up health bits, that they can see in the bottom left corner, oh, like there's icon recognition, right? So the icon for your health bits or your health power-ups, and how you're collecting them is then shown in the bottom left corner. And then the last thing is the same thing for the monster trophy, which only shows up when you essentially do a number of screen clears, and then after the screen clears, we give you the ability to shoot a dynamic monster, and if you kill that dynamic monster, you get a trophy, and that's what we call it. And then that increases the amount of medals you have, and your medals then feed your multiplier score so you can get bigger multipliers. So I know it's a mouthful, but these are the problems that we have where we have a lot of density, and even if you try to explain this in tutorials, there's no substitute for having better recognition as players play through, because in shmups are a very focused experience, and there's a lot going on, and there's very, very little downtime. You almost don't want to have any downtime in shmups. So then even trying to understand what all these things are, people just grab the things, and then it takes a little while to understand what those things do conveyance wise. So yeah, so how did we do this? All right, so let me flip back out. Okay, so first we start with, okay, we have our power-ups. So these are your health power-ups in the case. So I made a copy of the health power-up, and I essentially, because it's also a smaller resolution on screen than what you can make them whatever size you want, but because it was smaller, in our case, we basically scaled down the sprite sheet for doing the animations as well by about 50%, because it still looks good. And it's just a waste of GPU memory otherwise. So we started there, and then it's probably important to show here. So we went into the layers editor, and basically layers are the top layer renders the closest to the camera. So this will even render on top of the player. And in most games, the UI layer, because it conveys global or important information like your health, you don't want to necessarily fly over the health and not be able to see how much health you have. So we created the layer here. We added each of these icons to that layer. So you can see here, you can turn them on and off. And we put it at the very top, so then it's simulating rendering next to the text itself. And then you can also lock these when you're done setting those, because you only want to set them once. And then you don't want to grab them and move them around by accident, because generally UI it maintains the same space on screen all the time. Good design. Okay. So then in each of the objects, we did a couple things too. So one is, let's see. So under collision, we deleted the collision shape because we don't want these to be collected by the player. We don't want to be shot. We don't want them to be shot by other enemies. And this makes it to where none of those things happen. And also, when you have like your bomb, if you're using bomb in your game, this won't destroy these because essentially they are enemy types. So that's what we did here is we created them as enemies. So then we could use the second option here, which is as a wave, we attach them to the camera. So then this just basically means that as the camera, that these objects stick in the camera. So then it's a 3D engine. So then as the player travels through space, as the camera travels through space, we don't want these to move around in world space, so they stick to the camera. And then we also made sure for appearance that we turned off the particle system. You could leave it on, but we didn't want to trigger any particles. We didn't want them to feel like normal power-ups because they're supposed to convey UI information. And we also turned off the start sound for them as well. And I think gameplay-wise, they didn't need to do anything else there. I think those are the main things. We set the animation bits. And then just as a little pro tip here, you could do it however you want, of course. But I find for things in my game box that, especially for enemies, where I'm repurposing enemy types because they have more options than normal aspects, like background objects, for instance, that I name, just a little naming convention. Hey, get back over here. So I basically name the file name. I use an underscore at the very front of it. And so this sorts all of my functional bits that aren't truly enemies at the bottom of my game box. So just a little bit of an organizational tip there for you. And I did that for each of these items. And was there anything else? Yeah, so that's pretty much the setup. So a couple points of understanding that are probably useful. You have to set this up on a level by level basis. So I'd recommend it once you've set it up for your main level, starting with a copy of that level makes it easier. If your camera changes between levels in terms of where it sits in the world, for instance, you should hopefully be starting your camera always at 000. But if you're not, then that means you're gonna have to align these differently. So their world space will just be different if you go to the transform editor. So it won't necessarily be -510 on the X, for instance, for every level. And I think those were the main bits. Oh, the other thing that's probably worth knowing is, so I think I may have pointed this out, but you may have seen this too. So I already have a bug report out for Sunny on this case. So here with the monster trophy, I've noticed that the metal text, so in the UI, that it's center aligned. So as the number changes, the text actually changes its width and position relative to the numbers. So I'll just show that to you real quick. So just food for thought when you're thinking about how to do it for yourself. So you can see here that now the text is different, and then the UI icon that I'm using, that I'm cheating for, of course isn't going to move because there's no relationship between it and the enemy object that we're using in the world itself. So hopefully Sunny will be able to give us a fix to allow us just to have left aligned text in these cases, so it's not jumping around. For your own designs, of course, you could change that where you put the icon. You could put it in the front of the metals. You could put it in the back. That's one way as well. But yeah, so that was it. Okay, so I think those are the big bits. That's what problems we were solving. Thank you everyone that's been doing the play testing and for giving feedback. It's been super helpful in helping us kind of think about how to do maybe little creative hacks in the engine. Maybe this is something else you could also repurpose. For instance, like if you want to do sidekicks, there are only so many things you can do, but you could have like a sidekick that flies around with your ship. It won't move with your ship, but it could be on screen, so you can activate and deactivate them. And because they don't have any interactions with the world in that particular case, with being destroyed and whatnot, you could use them as sort of like a poor man's option, or like a helper or something like that as well. So okay, thank you. We will talk to you next time.